Trying to do our thing. Yeah. We'll see. Have the fun on doing is the expectation that I also mask up or with given that. Okay. Because it seems like it's very tenuous.
Mic test, mic test, mic test. Is it okay for you? Okay, great. Mic test, mic test. Okay, I think it's okay.
Do you have an estimate of how long the processional is going to be?
Right. Step from the take over your whole stuff. Right. The music is guitars playing softer. Yeah. I love the microphone. Thank you. 5 minutes. It's 3 and 5 minutes.
Yeah. Good. I have about 3 minutes, but I can just repeat something if it needs to go longer.
Yeah. If you think it's longer, just sit down.
Cool.
It's up to you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, usually I say 3 or 5 minutes.
Okay. No problem.
Sometimes we need more music.
Yeah.
The peace of Christ be with you. Welcome to Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary in the Chapel of the Unnamed Faithful. I am obviously not President Javier Vieira. He regrets not being able to be here in person with us. I have carefully prepared remarks by President Vieira, which I am honored to deliver to you this morning. It is a great joy to welcome you today to this auspicious event honoring 3 people of great significance to this seminary. I only wish that I could do so in person, but our global pandemic chose to strike close to home at a most inopportune moment. I join, however, in spirit, watching online, and through these words, celebrating each moment along with the Garrett-Evangelical community that has gathered across the globe to watch and share this moment. We honor 3 people today without whom this day would not be possible. First, Dr. Neil Fisher, who served Garrett-Evangelical as president for 21 years, as well as his spouse, the Reverend Isla Fisher, a Garrett-Evangelical alumna now of blessed memory. The Fishers were tirelessly devoted to this institution and its thriving, cared deeply for the people of this community, and sought to strengthen the intellectual and spiritual bonds that give this place its purpose. President Fisher was adept in administering and growing the seminary, while Reverend Isla Fisher, as both a student and historian, sought to ensure that the vision and passion of our founders, Eliza Clark Garrett, remained as alive and relevant to our future as it is to our past. The seminary's Board of Trustees wisely and generously expressed their gratitude to the Fishers through the establishment of the Neil and Isla Fisher Chair in Theology, and I'm so pleased that President Fisher will be able to join us today to witness and share in the 3rd installation of a scholar to the chair that bears his and Isla's name. The 3rd person we honor today, of course, is Dr. Brian Bantam, who came to Garrett-Evangelical in 2019 after an international search for the position that he formerly occupies today. A global pandemic has delayed Dr. Bantam's installation, but it has not hampered or diminished our enthusiasm for his presence in this community and our gratitude for all that he has already contributed to Garrett-Evangelical. Brian, this community called you because of your incisive mind, your prophetic theological imagination, your passion for training the next generation of scholars and leaders, and for your vision of what the world might be when the church is fully and finally faithful to the radical example embodied by Jesus. As you are installed into this distinguished chair and professorship, I say to you, take thou authority and lead. You have been called here for a purpose, and we're ready to receive what God will give us through your scholarship, your teaching, and your witness. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face rise upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord look on you with favor and give you peace. Dr. Bantam is joined today by his spouse, the Reverend Gail Song Bantam. And Gail, we also want to formally and enthusiastically welcome you to the Garrett-Evangelical family. Like the Fishers, the Bantams share scholarly and pastoral vocations and a commitment to prepare and equip emerging leaders for service to God and the world. One might conclude that the Spirit meant for the Fishers and Bantams to share this very moment, and they already share so much in common. In closing, it gives me great honor to be able to welcome my former teacher, my friend, my colleague, my brother, the Reverend Professor Dr. Willie James Jennings, back to Garrett-Evangelical. Dr. Jennings is no stranger to Garrett, having been on our campus countless times and present to our community often throughout the years. At times, he has come to challenge us, to inspire us, and to spark creativity and imagination within our community. At other times, he has come to help save us from ourselves, to help us think and act our way out of crisis and into deeper faithfulness. In every instance, he has been the embodiment of deep theological commitment that allow us to see ourselves more truthfully and to imagine who we could be if we were more courageous. It says a lot about who Dr. Brian Bantam is and the wisdom he possesses, that his Doctorvater is theological mentor, his fellow sojourner and spiritual confidant is none other than Dr. Willie James Jennings. Dr. Jennings is Associate Professor of Theology and Africana Studies at Yale, and before that, from 1990 to 2015, he served on the faculty of Duke University, teaching in the areas of theology and Black church studies. While at Duke, he also served nearly a decade as academic dean of the Divinity School. He is the author of over 80 articles, essays, and reviews on subjects ranging from theology, biblical hermeneutics, race, theological education, administration, cultural studies, and more. His fourth book, which reframes the Christian doctrine of creation, is soon forthcoming, and his first three books completely transform the way we understand the theological and Christian origins of race, the Acts of the Apostles, and how white normativity has shaped and continues to shape theological education. Willie, welcome back to a place that I hope feels like a home away from home, and thank you for the powerful role you have had in the life, mind, and heart of our colleague, Dr. Brian Bantam, whom we celebrate this day and whom you will now formally introduce to us.
To President Vieira, to Dean Tran, to the Reverend Gail Song Bantam, to the esteemed soon-to-be chairholder, Dr. Ryan Bantam, it is a great privilege and a pleasure for me to be here with you today. I bring you warmest greetings from Dean Gregory Sterling, the faculty, the staff, and the students of Yale Divinity School, who have allowed me to get on a plane and come today. I would not have done this for anybody else, but for Brian and for Gail and for Garrett and for this fabulous faculty and community. Why not? Why not? Brian Bantam has always seen the world differently, which means he has always asked astonishingly beautiful questions. The questions he asked from the very beginning of his academic journey broke open those status quo answers in theological and religious studies. Brian understood that those answers about what it means to speak of God and what it means to speak of the human, and what it means to speak of God with the human, could not make sense of the complexities of his body and his life. That work of making sense and bringing clarity to the complexities of our life with God in a racial world, a distorted and torn world, has been at the heart of his groundbreaking work. This man was destined to be a theologian because he listens. Like a great musician, Brian Bantam has great ears that are attuned to the soft sounds and quiet utterances people make when their words and bodies don't quite fit the boxes assigned to them. He also hears God in the silence and in the spaces between words written and spoken, aiming to signify life's joys, life's sorrows, and life's hope. With the gift of listening and the gift of inquiry, Dr. Bantam offers students access to a different way of doing theology, one that is deeply collaborative, celebratory of the different sounds we make when speaking of God and ourselves, and always, always faithful to the art faithful to the art. He is the artist searching, looking for what colors might be placed on the canvas, listening for how the tune may go, how the lyric may sound. Because, my friends, such searching is urgently, desperately needed at this moment. I offer this poem for you for this moment, Brian. Who did you go out to see? Someone dressed differently, there wandering in the wilderness, at home with the strange, dancing in open air, perhaps making a new sound that spoke of a day promised, hoped, forgotten, exhausted. Then he appeared, quickly waving, not me, not me. The one coming after me. It is my great joy and high honor to introduce to you the Neil F. and Isla A. Fisher Professor of Theology, the Reverend Dr. Brian Bantam.
Let me collect my thoughts for a minute. I have some acknowledgments, but I want to say, when it feels like you wander for a long time and you find home, there are no words for it. Through my life, I've oftentimes felt like I've been wandering, but God has also been gracious to give me homes. To give me homes in a woman that I met through a friend whom our first conversation was 5 hours long, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I knew. Wandered some more, sat in the office with a man with literally a notebook full of questions, and for him to say those questions are important was a moment like home. Then to have to leave that home, wander around for a bit, wonder if there was ever going to be a place like that again. To somehow then be offered a job, be extended an opportunity, and to have a president say, we want all of you and whatever it is that you have to offer. One of the gifts of a delayed installation has been that I know what it is that I'm coming into. And I know the gift that it is. That it's more than a place that is not there, but it's a place that I can call home. And you all have become home to me. And I'm deeply thankful for that. So with that said, I also want to again extend my thanks for your presence, for the presence of those who are watching this morning. I want to extend thanks to the Fishers. It is rare, it's oftentimes people will pay lip service to, oh yes, we want to support the church, we want to support faculty of color, but it's rare the person that offers of their own resources to make that possible. It says so much of Garrett that this is a chair that makes space for Black theologians to have a seat at the table, to speak into the life of this place. And I am again and again thankful for the Fishers' generosity and sustenance of this place. I mentioned Dr. Laline Rector, the president that preceded President Vieira, and I can't let this moment pass without also speaking to her creativity, her generosity, that all things are always possible, and for her that made this moment possible. I also want to thank all of those who made this literal moment possible, who in the midst of a very busy season made time to sort out schedules, to print, to coordinate. So Shane Nichols, April London, Dean Tron, Lashina Williams, Jordan Espiras, for all of you who have helped to make this moment possible, for Aaron Dorsey, for the beautiful rendition of O Come. I also want to mention Torian and Tiana Webb for their generous offer of a visual response to some of what will be shared that we see in the room as you exit from their own personal collection. I want to extend my gracious thanks to President Vieira, whom I still have yet to meet in person, but has constantly, instantly become a person whom I want to work for and I want to do well for, whom I hope to be a friend. And then lastly, from my faculty colleagues, for in the midst of unusual days and times, there has not been a moment when I've just been a face on a screen in a meeting that I have ever felt excluded, ever felt as though there was a conversation I was not a part of, that I was not a part of this community. And so your life, your faithfulness, your embrace of me has meant the world to me in this moment. And then lastly, to Gail and to my boys, there's no way that I'm here had Gail not said to me, I hear what you think you want to do with your life, but I think that there's more for you. You can risk pushing out a little farther, and we're going to walk together. And our life together has been one of wonder and possibility, and one of where I do not have to be afraid of what will be, even though I'm always afraid of everything. But I keep walking because I'm with you. And to my boys who I hope are watching, maybe my youngest is sneaking this on TV while he's in school, I hope. My boys are all wonderful, amazing individuals. And by individuals, I mean they are people who are deeply committed to what it is, to how they've been made. And because of that commitment, it always reminds me to live into authenticity for their sake. Because whenever I live into authenticity, they have permission to live into theirs. And as they live into their authenticity, it gives me courage to live into mine again. And so they remind me, they teach me, they love me no matter what. They don't care about the big words that I know. They just show up, or don't, because they're teenagers and young adults. But they're always there. And so I love you if you're listening. So I guess we should start with some remarks. I want to think a little bit today about what theology means. What does it mean to do theology in this moment? What does it mean to teach theology? To live a Christian life, to pastor, to walk with a congregation. I have to confess that in these days I am experiencing a profound need for words to describe what we are living. And at the same time, every time I come up with a word, I feel a deep, painful inadequacy for what of any analysis I attempt to offer. In some ways, the world has become just as much a mystery to me as God is. The more I examine and ponder and read, the more uncertain I become, if I'm really honest. And yet, here is the world. Here is God. Here is my body and my life. We are here, even in the insufficiency of our words and our questions. But what do we begin to say in a world where we have to admit our words are only ever glimpses of what is, whether we are speaking of God or of ourselves? But maybe that's the point. Maybe that this is the beginning of a recognition that whether we follow Karl Barth and say God with us, or we follow him and say we with God, there is mystery and wonder and uncertainty on both sides of the withness. If we begin with this, perhaps we might also begin to see the possibilities of our words and lives, not in the perfection of their analysis or history or diction, but in how our theology sings, how our theology lives and breathes. So to begin to imagine this, we must turn to our artists, to make room for our theologians to become artists and for artists to become theologians. Yes, there is a necessity for scholarship in the ways our institutions of higher education are built. This is important, critical work. And there is something that the artists in our midst offer us as well, that might press out past our classrooms and our conferences into the streets, into our sanctuaries. And so at stake for me is a question of what could theology gain from writers alongside critics? And here I am adapting a distinction made by Ann Dillard in Living by Fiction. She writes, "A work of fiction is indeed interpretive in the special sense that it is by intention an object to be interpreted. Unlike the critic, who intends his interpretation to be near the level of a final say, and who does not at any rate expect the world to devote much energy to analyzing his interpretation, the fiction writer intends his work to be a primary object. The fiction writer intends to be interpreted." She goes on to suggest the writer is certainly interested in the art of fiction, but perhaps less so than the critic is. The critic is interested in the novel. The novelist is interested in their neighbor. Perhaps even more than his own techniques, then, the writer is interested in knowing the world in order to make real and honest sense of it. He worries the world and probes it. He collects the world and collates it. No part of it is outside his field, end quote. So in a moment where no accumulation of the critic's analysis can help us to recognize, much less pursue a future, I wonder if the possibility is not in what we say, but in how we say it and who we say it with. When we see and feel and sense the world in all of its materiality and complexity, when we express it in a way that aims to draw people into the beauty or gruesomeness of a moment, perhaps we can imagine new ways of being in the world right now. That we might be able to read the mystical, the wonder, the awe, the love that resides in the everyday. We cannot explain what is beautiful about life with God solely from the perspective of the critic or the scholar. As ones who have collated what others have said about God, if our lives with God are beautiful, and I believe that they are, we can only share it. By share, I mean invite people to feel the power and the possibility of their lives, to feel the fear but not be overwhelmed by it, to say that somehow our life with God and our lives with one another has meaning, even if we don't know it in that moment. I suppose it's the difference between telling someone how amazing bread is and taking them to your favorite bakery and letting them taste the way the crust tears away and the flesh melts in their mouth as they chew. It's the difference between reading a recipe and feeling the dough pressed between your fingers as you knead it. While so many of us lament and wonder about the future of theological education and the church, I fear we sometimes miss the hunger of young people, of all people in our midst, to taste and see that God is good. Now, of course, this idea of a theology that speaks of God through the materiality of our world is far from an innovation. I'm not saying anything new. You see the birds, there was once a man, Jesus picked up some dirt. Our words about God rise from the dust of our lives together and return again and are always grounded from Jesus' life with us. Jesus spoke to us in parables, spoke to us in examples, spoke through his bodily life walking from here to there. This was the beginning. So what if our theological education was not only about histories or doctrine or historical method or word studies, all endeavors that are critical to understanding that we are part of a long and complicated tradition? But what if theological education was also sitting under a tree and thinking about how to describe how the leaves fall? About understanding how colors mix and layers shade to give an image depth and contrast in movement. Just like there is a difference between reading a recipe, tasting bread, and baking a loaf, there is something in the practice of creating, of working our hands into clay, of framing an image just right that also begins to shape how we see one another, how we see the wonder and the miraculous all around us. We with God. There is mystery on both sides. What does it look like when theology, our words about God, struggle to become bread, to become taste and scent? I wonder if our theology will begin to sound and read differently. And I wonder if we also will find more of ourselves in this work. And if we help our students, we'll also bring more of themselves when we meet them. Now, of course, if I believe what I'm saying, I'm already in danger of sharing a recipe instead of inviting you to taste. I'm bordering on talking about art instead of offering an experience. So what follows is a small piece of what has been in process for me for the last 10 years. My own process of struggling with the inadequacy of my own theological writing in the face of beauty and pain in the world. What will follow me is what I'm calling an asystematic theology, a way of pointing to the power of theological stories, of how our ideas about God and humanity and sin and Jesus are all stitched together, implicitly and explicitly in all that we do. And yet the power and effect of these systems are not always captured in our reflection on ontology or epistemology or transcendence or historical method. But neither are these questions unimportant. So in these 5 reflections, I want to ask what it might look like, what it might feel like to become immersed in the story, to see ourselves swimming in it, and what happens when we rise from those waters and enter the world again. And so I'm so thankful for my colleagues and my students who are willing to add their voices to this moment. This work is not meant to say all that there is, but prayerfully draw us into a communion of sorts with one another and with God. And now, in addition to the readings that will follow, I invite you, as you leave this space, to also walk with a visual response that is along the wall, generously offered by Torian and Tiana Webb for their personal collection. I sent them these. Torian couldn't be here today, and so he graciously agreed to offer responses to each individual piece. And so what you see is their curation, their response to that. Now, what I love about these pieces and the conversation they reflect is that it's not one of illustration or explanation. They are not trying to visualize my words, but it is, in fact, a kind of moment where we maybe hope to sing together and see what comes. And so we all offer these with the hopes that some who have been doing theology in its manifold ways, whether in your poetry or in your paintings or drawings or dance or composition, that perhaps you might also say, this would be a place for you. That what you have put your hands to does not have to be a choice between theology and art, but that the art can be your theology, and we need you. And so now I offer to you, We with God, an asystematic theology in 5 parts. Thank you all.
Part 1, God. We were walking through the park the other day, and my 5-year-old asked me, "Where is God?" I'm not sure what sparked his question. A leaf falling from its branch, the wind chimes, woken by the wind, the cat that curled its back up and stared at us as we passed. "Where is God?" he asked again. I took his cheeks in my hands and told him to look at me. God is in my face, and God is in your face. Look at your hands. God is in your hands. Look at the stick you've been carrying. God is in that stick. God is a stick? God is you? God is me? He asked. Well, no, I said. God is not you and me and the tree exactly. I was beginning to dig a hole for myself already. God is in all those things because God holds all those things together. I tried to explain. He does not look convinced. We bent down over a patch of dirt, and I scooped up a little pile and said, "The dirt is us. The hands are God." And I squeezed the dirt and pressed it till the oils and sweat of my palms mixed in, and then I spit a bit just for good measure, which made my little boy laugh and laugh. That little pile of dirt became a ball, and I kept squeezing and rolling it in my hand to keep it damp. I am in this ball because part of me is in it, but the dirt isn't the same thing as me. I am not the same as the dirt, but it has part of me. It stays a ball because I keep giving it something of myself. I keep giving parts of myself because I want it to be. I want it to be because I love it. He held his hand out to me. "Can I be God now?" he asked.
Part 2, Humanity. I awoke today, and the first thing I saw was the clay like me. Well, almost like me. Some curves in different places, and some strange dangling bits. It was red, brown, and rich. The clay was lighter than me. I am dark and smooth, like the earth where the sweetest fruits come from. I was just turning on my side to stretch when this clay tried to name me. "Woman," it said. The name sounded strange to me, but I wasn't sure what else I would call myself. So I just kept looking and breathing and taking in this world I found myself in. We are some of the animals here. We all eat. We run, we nuzzle noses and help to clean each other. We are still giving names to all these other animals we meet. I don't know what they call each other. I guess the names are more for us than them. But the clay I woke up to, our fingers fit. When I looked up at the tree, they seemed to want to help me reach the sweet orange globes that hang. And I want to help them. Some of the other animals will come and go, but the clay seems to follow me, and I like to follow them. We seem to know each other's sounds, and it feels safer when they are around. There is something that hangs in the air when they see me, when I see them. I think it's true for all of us earthen things. We do not have a word for it yet. What hangs in the air between us all, above us, in us, but we know it's there. We clung together and walked together and wondered and held each other when we were afraid. I hope we will be less afraid tomorrow when we wake again.
Part 3, we fell. My eyes were open. The finches circled and squirrels scrambled around trees. They seemed only concerned about food or themselves. Were they so different? These little things that fled as we walked through the trees, or they puffed and snarled the same way each day, as though we had just passed by that way yesterday. I do not puff out my chest or run when I'm scared. I do not curl back like a cat or snarl like a dog. No, we are not the same. We are different. We are not so weak. I must be more than that. We are more than that black horse that runs in the fields beyond the stream, or the cow that does nothing but graze after we milk it in the morning. Yes, I feel hunger snarl my insides when the berries have withered, but the salmon haven't begun to swarm the river. Yes, I look at her and imagine my hands running up her thigh and my mouth on the bend of her neck. But I am not like those creatures who mount each other mindlessly. Look at that elephant with its loping heft. I am so small next to her. Look at the wolf and her pack. All I can do is hide if it catches my scent. No, I am not prey. I won't be prey. I am not like them. I am no animal. I am human. I am not small. I am not weak as I seem. I am not as unknowing as I feel. I am not as fleeting as strawberry bushes at the end of the summer, as needy as this one I wake with, as that cow. I am not named. Let me snap these branches to weave a basket. I'll wind these fibers into something to cover my weakness, my desire, and my waste. See? Even the trees serve me. Let me burn them to make a field. See? I will never hunger again. See? See how I lift these stumps, these enormous rocks. Who cares if she gave birth to new life and groans and sweat and then somehow nourished them from her body? See? I killed the creatures that hunted us. I fed us. Who cares if she gathered the wood and crushed the herbs and turned the roots and bone into broth and the berries into glaze and turned the meat over in the fire every 10 minutes until it had the feeling of warm fruit in our mouths? See, I am not like you. I am not like this world. See?
Part 4, God with us. Why would you come to Mary if you were not going to receive anything from her? What did you see? What did you want to learn? To love? The way she held her mother or sung to her sister to sleep? Or was it the way she shook when soldiers marched in her streets with spears heavy from the blooded bellies of her people on their tips? Did you need to feel her hunger for your people and the pain of their toil filled other people's baskets? She walked through dusted streets, her life tilted only towards betrothal, marriage, and bearing heirs. For so long the coils of men's words hemmed her in, slid her mother's knowings into drawers to be used but not seen. But you saw what she saw. As promise knit into muscle and bone, you said, I want to be raised by you. I want you to teach me to pray. I want your life to be the life I follow with my eyes as the world becomes known to me. I want to hear the tremor of your voice when we walk among our neighbors, who hunger and thirst. I want to know the world through your life, your humanity. How can this be? To see word and love and woman nodded into Mary's son. She said yes. God kneaded clay into toes and fingers, eyes opening in the warmth of liquid life, beginning and end listening to garbled voices from within skin and bone. The push of a heart that said yes to harboring the holy. Her breath, her sweat, hope becoming flesh, and then from the darkened den she emerges, light pouring from within, you in your priestess's arms. God swaddled in need, seeking her eyes, rooting for your mother's life. As you slept, you brought peace to us. In your need, you fed our longing. You, God enfleshed, are never without us. We are never without you. Let us be like you. Let us be like her.
She stepped out from the little closet behind the choir loft in black Jordan shorts and her blue soccer camp t-shirt. The stage had been cleared of the tall cross and the pulpit, and where there used to be a floor, there was a deep tub and steps that had sandy grips, just like her grandma's house. She looked out on the congregation, her mother, her grandmother, her brother on his phone. The organ hummed, and the water in the tub shivered as the bass danced with the drums. She took her first step and wet, warm, climbed her toes to her ankles. Afraid she would slip, warm hands grasped hers as she descended into the pool. Standing there waist deep in water, I do and I will fell from her mouth, responding to the whispers of the midwife calling her forth. Mija, I baptize you in the name of, and she let herself be pressed back. She let herself fall, but her weight was not her own. As the water crawled up her sides, up her back, up her neck, one last breath. The water soaked through the strands of her black crown. Her eyes closed, wet and dark met, and the new enfolded her. Water was everywhere. There was no place it was not, where it did not cling to her in the dark. The words dissolved into murmuring silence. Chaos, peace, muffled sounds, spirit, rise, welcome. Past her pressed her back, her hand into her back, and words rushed in as the water rushed. Her face pressing through the membrane into the world of air again. The two women held each other, and this newly born creature took her first steps out of the womb, her clothes and hair heavy, stepping out into the world again, dripping with God and ready to share.
Dr. Bantam, would you please join me up here? On behalf of President Vieira, and this time in my own words as academic dean, I have the honor of presenting to Dr. Bantam an explanation of the medallion that has been ordered specifically for him for this occasion, but unfortunately has been delayed in production due to the pandemic. Of course, we will present the medallion to him when it arrives. It will look like this one that is on loan from one of our faculty colleagues. I don't know whether you want to hold it because we don't want a photo op for you exactly. The medallion will look like this. It will bear Dr. Bantam's name and title, Neil F. and Isla A. Fisher, Professor of Theology. On it will be etched the seal of Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary. Professor Bantam, we hope that you will receive the medallion as a sign of the hopes which birthed our three founding institutions, the Garrett Biblical Institute, the Chicago Training School, and Evangelical Theological Seminary. We look to you, our new Neil and Isla Fisher Professor of Theology, to renew the noble traditions of these great institutions that are Garrett-Evangelical Theological Seminary as a living hope for the living of these days. We pledge to share with you in the responsibility of teaching, learning, serving, and leading, as guided by the symbols on the seal, rooted in the scriptures, faithfully in the living Christ, dedicated to the upbuilding of the church through the making of resources needed to fuel the lamp of learning that is entrusted to our collective care. Wear the seal not as an ornament or object of adornment. Instead, know that it marks the distinction of a role, a responsibility, and a calling which the seminary proudly confers upon you, which sets you not apart, but a part of a larger, greater lineage of critical faith, critical thought, and critical action. Be cloaked by the living traditions that it represents, and be soaked in the hopes that it conjures, so that through your faithful professing, we and all those whose lives you touch may be prepared to do what you have painted for our imagination this morning, step out into the world, dripping with God and ready to share. Congratulations, Brian.
So you received the swag, Garrett swag. You get one more furniture piece here. I think this is a unique Garrett tradition. I'm not sure if other institutions actually gift a chair. And yet, I don't think there's any written material on this tradition. So I kind of had to think about, what the chair symbolized when I received one. And so I will do what President and Rector did at the time. Would you please sit down on the chair? How does it feel? Comfy, right? Surprisingly, I know. So, unless I am wrong, you have been working as professor for the past 12 years while being pastor's spouse, which is very unique, we all know, and spouse, and being a dad. Many folks think professors teach their courses a couple of times a week and do not realize that on average, according to Inside Higher Ed, professors put on an average of 61 hours per week of work that include prepping for class and various committee tasks, tending to students and each other, and other service work outside of institutions. This does not include research and writing. This is more than 50% higher than the average 40-hour a week. I don't have the stats for faculty of color, but you and I know that we've had to work harder, write more, research more, to go through tenure and other promotions and to arrive at this point. Despite attempts toward faculty load equity, American Council on Education's most recent research on workloads and rewards states that faculty from historically minoritized groups are disproportionately called upon to do invisible yet critical work necessary for the life of any institution. Even more so with COVID-19 pandemic. You know this, and you have lived through this. Your family has lived through this with you. I hope when you get a chance to sit on this chair, the first thing you do is a long exhale and cry out those ears. Secondly, I want you to put your hands in the air and shout out with joy and celebrate all that you've accomplished and endured with tenderness and power. I hope this chair reminds you to take time to breathe, to sit and allow yourself the privilege of letting your creative mind wander and wander and wander, and imagine all that has not been, all that could be. To sit and dream of ways we might continue to be on our way into a differently structured world. I hope this chair is also a reminder of a place of leadership, responsibility, authority, and acknowledged wisdom that you share and exercise with us and on our behalf. I hope on this chair, while your mind wanders and you dream big, you be part of us as we imagine a different world, another world. Congratulations.
And now, let us go forth, blessed and confident in the assurance that God with us and we with God are called to joy and beauty and justice and peace, here in this place and in all the paths that we know the Spirit will open up for us. Go in peace. Amen.